Hi, all. Welcome. This is about estimating course costs and delivering value. So I noticed that there is always a stream of comments and questions about how do you price courses and how do you estimate how long a course is going to take. So I'm Dr. Robin Sargent, owner of Idle Courses. We build transcendent courses and I help people become idols. And so, of course, I chose this topic because it's something that somebody's always interested in. It is a difficult thing to figure out. I know that even now, I still struggle with determining costs and timelines and really just like how are you going to make sure that your client or your customer gets the most amount of value for what they're paying you, because you want to over deliver, especially if you are a freelancer, right? Because that's how you get that customer to return to you. That's how you get higher rates. And that's how you get word of mouth and all these sorts of things, is to be able to deliver a value that's even greater than the price tag. But you also need to get paid, and you need to get paid in a way that compensates you for your experience. And so that's why I chose this topic, to shed some light on some of the things that I've learned as a freelancer and now a business owner. And I think that these principles can apply to freelancers and they can apply to individuals and people who are also working in corporate and need to map out, how much is this training program going to actually cost? How long is the timeline going to actually be? And those kinds of things, they can both be used with this method that I'm going to share with you. But a lot of what I'm sharing does apply to freelancers for sure. This is a topic that freelancers struggle with, which is like, what do I charge them? All right, so I am on Zoom because I need to share my screen with you, because there are a couple of things that you have to see in order for this to be clear to you. So let me share this screen right here. And that's where we will start. Okay, so I have a couple things up for you. And the first thing that I want to tell you about is this project cost calculator. Now, a project cost calculator has instructor-led training, and then there's 3 levels of e-learning. And this is kind of just a known thing among the industry. Somebody did a study back then, and to determine, the time it takes on average to deliver 1 hour of training based on these 4 different types of deliverables. Well, that they then measured and did studies and did surveys and found out like what is the average for each one of these. And that is actually what this calculator is about. But I want to come back to just my face so that you're not distracted, because let's see, stop share. Because before you even get to the project cost calculator, you need to determine something important, and that is your worth. What is it worth for your price, for your expertise, for your skills, for your speed, and also, of course, for the quality of your output? And so that's really what you have to determine first. So, like, what is your hourly rate? And I'm not going to necessarily suggest that you charge an hourly rate, but if you're a freelancer, you'll need to determine what is going to be your hourly rate. There are many ways to determine, but really, I've done a lot of studies on, how do you determine your hourly rate? And a lot of it comes down to like confidence and a gut feeling that you have. And of course, there is the market, but that market out there goes from $15 an hour to $125 an hour, right? And so that's a large range. That's not like, all instructional designers cost $45 an hour, because that's just not the case. And that should not be the case if you have 10 years experience, you have multiple levels of skills, you are quick to deliver, and you deliver outstanding outputs. So that person obviously should and does and charge more. But if you're starting out and you don't have much experience, you don't even know how long it takes you to get something done because you don't have that experience performing those actions, well, then it makes sense for you to start at a lower rate. And of course, everyone has to pay their dues. And what I mean by that is quite literally, you got to pay your dues in rate and you got to pay your dues in time so that you can get your experience. All right. So sometimes a way to figure out like what your rate is like, try to quantify your experience and your skills and your outputs and things like that. And maybe what you've been paid before that you felt comfortable with. But sometimes just get the calculator out and just kind of put numbers in. Think about, if you're a freelancer, you're going to have to pay taxes, at least 15%. You are not getting benefits. You are spending business time on this project, because when you're a freelancer, your business is not just being an instructional designer. Your business is going out and getting new clients. Your business is doing marketing. Your business is doing, other types of follow-up practices. And so that makes your time even more valuable when you're actually working on your projects, because of all those other overhead costs that you have to do. Now, when I say determine your costs, I mean like I am being an instructional designer. I'm instructionally designing a course, and I am developing that course in some kind of authoring tool or PowerPoint or whatever. Now, that is your first hourly rate that you'll want to determine, okay? Because to even make any of the other like fixed project cost estimates, you need to determine like what is like, your main work, that work that you do, what is that per hour to you, and what are you worth? And of course, you get to determine what you're worth and what you will accept. All right, you've determined that. Now, in any kind of project, you will not just wear the hat of instructional designer, right? You could wear the hat of the front end analysis. And I'm looking over to the side, so I might as well just share with you my screen. Okay, now you can see it. And then lesson plan development, your creation of the handouts, the workbook development. This is just instructor led, right? I'm just going through this list over here of roles. The project management, if you're going to be doing the project management of that course, the interviews that you have to do with subject matter experts, the administration tasks that you have to do, the emails. And so you probably don't and shouldn't think about that hourly rate as the same as your instructional design rate. And especially if you're going to come up with a project cost, right? So say, for instance, your instructional design rate in this example is $75 an hour, okay? But your rate for project management, or maybe just for administrative tasks, is $30-$40 an hour, right? So that time that it takes you to get on meetings and send out emails and those kinds of things, that's $45 an hour. But the heavy lifting that you'll do as the instructional designer comes at a cost of $75 an hour. So those are other rates that you'll want to consider, because the best way that I found to come up with a project rate and cost estimate for a client, and this also works for corporate too, all right? Because for corporate, what those costs are, right? You know what your project management salary or hourly rate is. you already know what your instructional designer rate is, you know what your e-learning developer rate is, etc. Okay, and so you know what their rates are going to be, so you can use your own calculator to plug those rates in. So this one that I'm showing you is a calculator that has just one flat rate, and then it applies it to all. But you could use the same calculator, and I'm going to give you this calculator in the comments or whatever. You can use the same calculator, and you can like zero out the other things and just put the hourly rate, say for instructional design, and then you can like, oh, okay, just for instructional design, it's going to cost this much, and then you like put in the other hourly rate and look at the line item for project management, right? And so you can do it that way, and you can come up with a cost. All right, so that is how you determine, that's the first thing you determine. You determine your hourly rates for all those different items, line items, in the different things that go into developing instructional, instructor-led training, e-learning, and there are 3 different levels. So when you think, when it says, when you see this and you see e-learning quote level 1, that's basically like your click to reads. You know, there's not a lot of interactions involved. You've basically imported a PowerPoint into Articulate Storyline, and now you're just going to sync up the audio to those slides. And then maybe you'll add a quiz or something like that. Level 1, okay? The minimum amount of effort needed to publish an e-learning course. E-learning quote 2. Now, this is where most e-learning courses fall. If they want any kind of animation, interactions, if they want videos, if they want animations, this is a level 2. And so that, of course, means that it takes more time. And then level 3 is a high number of animated videos, a high number of, face to camera videos or whatever those videos are, a high level of interactions. Maybe you've got to gamify your course in some way, or you have to plug in some special JavaScript, or you've got to do some XAPI and talk to their learning management system to trigger some interesting outputs or whatever. That is a level 3. And of course, that comes at a higher timeline. Now, the averages, and this is in the reference section of this project cost calculator, are in here, right? So it's like the low for 1 hour of output is 22 hours. So you could probably get an hour's worth of instructor-led training content done in 22 hours of work time if, it's just basic. But the average is 43 hours to complete one instructionally designed, instructor-led training output. However, while these are the averages found by somebody probably like several years ago, what I recommend that you do, especially if you are a freelancer, and then I recommend that you have your team members do this if you are, maybe you're in charge of a team of instructor-led, if you're in charge of a team of instructional designers or e-learning developers or any kind of like course project, what I recommend that you either have your team members do or you do for yourself is you track your time when you are working on specific outputs. So if you are creating the PowerPoint for a 1 hour instructor-led training course, time yourself. How long does it take you actually to create that PowerPoint? And the best way that I found to time myself is with some kind of tracker. Not like, time yourself with like, hey Siri, set a timer, but instead I use this one. It's free. It's called tracker.toptal.com. And whenever I was starting out and I was having to figure out like, my project costs and how much time things actually take me to complete, I would create a project in here, right? Like idle courses builds. And then I would start the web tracker, and then I would stop it whenever I was, whenever I paused, um, say I was working on a PowerPoint or whatever. Then I would pause whenever I was working on a PowerPoint. What's great about this tracker is that it pauses the tracker automatically if you stop working for 10 minutes or whatever. So you always have, if you forget, you'll be within a good range still, because it doesn't go on more than 10 minutes if you've, walked away from your computer or forgot to turn it off. And so this is important because then you will know how much time it actually takes you to complete something. And then you can use that same project cost calculator that I'm about to give you and tailor it for your own way of working, and for the specific things that you do or that your team does. And so, like, if you are a chief learning officer, maybe you have your team members time themselves on the specific tasks that they do, and so that you can come up with project costs, and get real close to how long it actually takes you to complete a project. Because there's nothing worse than being like creatively optimistic about how long it's going to take to deliver a course project, and then you have stakeholders asking where things are, or you have clients asking where things are. You're overworked, or you didn't charge enough because you didn't put in enough room for you to actually complete the task. And just a general principle is that building anything takes probably twice as long as you think it does. And you'll be surprised probably if you've never tracked yourself, or your time, like specifically on tasks, then you would probably be surprised like just how long it takes you. So for instance, I had a project recently where they gave me the PowerPoint, like they gave me all the text in there, but I had to graphically design all of, the slides on that PowerPoint. And it was 160 slides. It took me 10 hours, like 10, like actual working hours, not like 10 hours. I like got up and went for lunch, or, stopped for coffee, or, talked at the water cooler. No, like 10 actual working hours. And that's the kind of things that you probably do not know, and you cannot estimate unless you are actually tracking yourself. And so now that you know your rate, you've tracked yourself on the individual items, then when you go to this project cost calculator, you can now determine what it costs for each piece of the project if you're doing it, or if your team members are doing it, for 1 hour, right? Because otherwise, you're just giving all the pieces the same rate, and you're just going by somebody else's data. And as we know, like, since this was created, the guidelines were created a while ago, like everyone will always say like, oh, it takes 40 to 80 hours for instructor-led training. Like, that's just something like people who've been in the industry just kind of say. But we have some rapid development tools that are around and that are newly developed, and we have templates a lot of times for our PowerPoints. And so it doesn't necessarily take as long, or it could take longer if it's more complex, as far as the technology goes too. So either way, even though I'm going to give you this cost calculator, I highly recommend that you determine your own costs for each task and actually time yourself so that you know what times to put in. And it's really easy to do it. You just go to the data part here, and you can put in the actual times, right? And then you have your own personal rate calculator, which is great, right? Okay. The other thing that I then would recommend to you, so say you go and do this, you have figured out your rates for each thing that you do. You have figured out how much time it takes you for each of those tasks, or your team members, right? Make yourself a rate card. All right. I kind of like black some things out because, it's whatever. You don't need to see all rates that I put on mine, because it doesn't matter, because you are going to come up with your own. And I don't want mine to influence you, because you could charge less or you could charge more, and it's up to you. So I just didn't want to influence you. So here is the rate card. So say, for instance, I say here, instructional design. If you just want me to instructionally design something for you for 1 hour, here's my rate. Here's what it includes. And clients love this, by the way. If you don't have a rate card, I highly recommend a rate card. They just love it. They love being able to see it, because everywhere else you go, you get to see a rate card. You get to see like how much something actually costs. You go to a website, you can click on pricing, and they've got your options right there. You know what? You can do the same thing if you do those other 2 steps I've told you. So for instance, for me, I know to create an animated video and beyond takes around 2 hours. Okay. But I say 2 hours of actual work to create 1 minute of output. So what do? I take that hourly rate of creating video and I times it by 2 for 1 minute of output. And that's what it comes out to be. And then they see that they get all of these kinds of things in their 1 minute of output. And then so on and so forth. E-learning development, how much does 30 minutes cost? How much does an hour cost? And of course, what's great about creating a rate card is you can get, you can get, I don't know if fancy is a word, but whatever. You can get fancy with your rate card, because maybe if they give you an hour-long project instead of a 30-minute e-learning course, then you can give them a discount or something like that. And so here's kind of what my rate card looks like job aids and voiceover and editing the voiceover and all that other kind of stuff. Another thing that you can do is if you want to charge an hourly rate and it's a new client. So a friend of mine told me one time, I said, if it's a new client, sometimes I charge them more than I would a returning client. And she called that the butt sniffing fee. And I think that's so funny, because it is true. A lot of times when you get a new client, you don't know what kind of demands that client is going to bring to you, or how picky they're going to be, or how many revisions they're going to want to do, or whatever. And so you may want to start them at a hourly rate just to kind of see how they work, and to see like how long it actually takes you to do some of their project. And you can have them buy a block of hours, and if they buy more hours, then you start to give them a discount. So see, for instance, I just filled out this table. Say for the first 100 hours, it's $100 an hour, whatever. And then second 100 hours, they get a $5 an hour break, which is actually, if you add that up, it's quite a bit of money. I don't have a calculator brain, so I'm not going to add that up right now. So that's another thing. So you can have a rate card of just like a flat fee. You can have an hourly rate card where they can buy blocks of hours. And you also could have a retainer model. And a retainer model means that, say, for instance, you've done the homework, how long it takes you to create a level 2 e-learning course from like start to finish, and all the parts that you complete of that project, and how long that takes. And so you say, all right, it takes me this much and it costs $5,000. So you could say, here's a retainer. The retainer is $5,000, a minimum of 2 months, and you get a minimum output of at least a 30-minute level 2 e-learning course project, or you get a block of hours, like 60 hours for whatever you want. And so just so you know, I've never had anyone take me up on the retainer. So it's there. If you get it, it's great. But retainers are not something that I've encountered, but I have offered them. But they could work for you if you break it down even further. Say something that people always want that are like one-off projects, but they want them every month. Maybe they always need new job aids, or they always need new workbooks, or they always need like another PowerPoint slide, whatever it is. And they can come to you month after month and just keep a a monthly rate and you keep delivering every month, kind of on your own time, and you can fit it into your schedule, retainer model might be the way to go for you. Now, away from the rate card, I just want to stop the share for just a second and come back to you and say, so there are basically, what do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's talk about 4 ways that you can charge for your projects. So you can do a fixed project cost, right? Which I've already told you how to do that. You can also do a hourly rate, which even if, like, I do not recommend that freelancers do hourly rates. You can tell them what your hourly rate is when you give them the project cost estimate, and then you like justify your project cost by showing them the hourly rate built in. But it is very difficult to scale a freelance business in any way if you are working by the hour. And if you're a freelancer, isn't that why you left corporate? So that you were no longer a, a slave to the hours and the time clock. So if you want to really grow your freelance business, I really recommend that you get away from that hourly model and instead you figure out what your time is worth, and maybe even figure out like what your time is worth and build in another hour in there so that you have a little more freedom, because that's also why you probably became a freelancer, is to have more freedom. And so build in there the things that you need to have like your work-life balance into your project costs, because you're not going to be overcharging them to do that. As a matter of fact, you're only going to be saving your sanity, because all projects always take longer than you think they will. So if you add an extra 10, 20% to like your original estimate based on your actual work hours, you're going to be fine. And you're going to, you might even actually end up using all that time. And then the other thing is that people are doing now is there are a lot more instructional designers getting hired to build online courses for online experts that people are going to go and sell. And a lot of those online experts that might come to you, they haven't sold their course yet. But they're coming to you and they're, they got a small budget and they're like, oh, I need somebody to help me instructionally design this. I don't know where to start, but I don't have that much money. The thing that you can do in that situation, if you're a little liquid in the cash department and this looks like a good opportunity for your portfolio, or it's a new project that you'd like to take on, but they're not meeting your rate, what you could do is you could say, okay, what's your budget? And then you take some of that budget money and then you say, and also, because I'm doing this for such a smaller fee of what I usually charge, then I'm also going to ask for 5, 10, 50%, whatever of your course sales. And that is a model that is completely valid, and I have used myself. So that's just another way to think about pricing your course projects. And maybe it's another idea for freelancers as far as like a market that you may not have tapped into. So those digital courses and designing those for entrepreneurs. And there's some good looking like entrepreneurial digital courses out there. And a lot of them are bringing in instructional designers. All right. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about is you're like, okay, well, what if somebody comes to me and they already have this piece done, and this piece done, and they want me to do this, this, and this, right? And so they say, oh, I already have all the content already. How many have heard that before? I've got all the content ready. And you're like, oh, sure you do. I'm sure you have all the content. What they do is they just give you a big old dump of files. And that still means that you're going to have to weed through all that content, or you're still going to have to instructionally design that content. And so there's other people that say, no, like really, I've written out the full scripts. You don't have to change the scripts that much, maybe make a few tweaks here and there. If we just went with my scripts and I just wanted you to build it out in eLearning, what's that going to cost me? So I wanted to show you, of course, this other tool. This other tool that I like to use for when people come to me with scripts and I have to figure out how long it's going to cost. It's Edge Studio, and I'll put all these links in at the end. It's Edge Studio, and you can just paste your script and it will tell you how many minutes of output it is. So for instance, for me, when I create animated videos and I need to calculate the time and cost of those animated videos, I can copy the script, I can put it in there, and then whatever the output is, like say it says this script is going to be 20 minutes long, right? Well, I know it's going to be, if it's a 20-minute script, then as far as just doing the animation part, I know that it's going to be 40 hours, right? To finish that one script full animation, because I'm giving 2 hours per 1 minute of output. And if that says it's 22 minutes, and it's actually been pretty right on the money, because a lot of times you'll look at a script and you'll see like, oh, it's only 5 pages. That won't take long. But then you put 5 pages in there and you're like, oh, well, that's 10 minutes. And if that's going to take 20 hours in animation. And that's, I mean, as a freelancer, 20 hours can be a lot of your week, especially if you have all those other things that you have to complete. All right. Because I'm on Zoom, it is difficult for me to see your comments. So I'm going to see if I can see if you guys are talking to me at all. All right. Hello, Jen. Hello, Claire. And that's all I got. All right, good. So you guys are good over there. Feel free to let me know what your questions are. I'll go back and visit you in the comments. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about is to build in value. And so I kind of mentioned it a little bit about, giving yourself a little bit of room so that you still have the freedom that you want as the freelancer. But there are other ways that you can increase the value of what you give your clients. And that is create surveys and get some kind of access to the metrics for whoever you are creating that training for. And the reason why you want to get access to the metrics for whatever problem that you're solving is because you want to show how, your course delivered a solution to that problem. So, I always go to sales because it's an easy thing to measure. And that thing is like these salespeople, the problem was they weren't making enough phone calls to get the amount of leads that they wanted and the fill rate and whatever. So you look at it before you develop your training, and then you look at it after you've delivered your training and everybody's taken it. Was there an uptick in the amount of phone calls going out to new leads? And then maybe did that drive more sales? Now, of course, like it's difficult to say that's a one-to-one correlation, but that is something that is valuable. That's valuable to your client. That's valuable to your boss. That's valuable to your stakeholders if you're in the corporate. And then the other thing is what about your data, right? So if you are a freelancer, sometimes you don't get access to the learning management system data, but sometimes you do. And if you're in corporate, then you probably do get access to the learning management system data, and you can see how much engagement there is. How long did they stay in the course? Did they complete the course? These kinds of things are other pieces of value that you can bring to show like, not only did I complete the project in this timeline at this budget, but people are engaged with the course. And then here's these other data points, like people are making more phone calls and generating more leads. Also, whenever you are a freelancer, think of the way that you can deliver the best product for them and the best output. So one of the number one tips I'd like to give you as a freelancer that I kind of learned the hard way is have somebody else besides your client be your QA. So even if you have to hire one of our newbies on the Become an IELTS Facebook group or Instructional Design Jobs to QA your course, I highly recommend it before you send it out to your client. Even if you could put a one of these people on a retainer, so that, because sometimes you don't know when something's going to be done exactly, and you just need somebody to like be available to QA it for you right away. Then maybe put somebody who has a little bit of free time that can kind of do that for you on some kind of monthly retainer if you constantly have projects that you need to QA before you send it to the client. I highly, highly recommend that. And especially have somebody QA your projects if, for instance, there's sometimes as freelancers, you are like you don't have your client is, you're like a third party to your client. So your client may have won the business to develop this specific training program, and you are the developer for that person that won the contract for their client, right? And I've noticed that a lot of times you will send your project to that person, to your client, thinking that they're going to review it before they send it to their end client. But what usually happens is that middle person does not, because they've hired you thinking that you're going to get it right for them so they don't have to worry about it. Then they don't QA it, they don't test it, they don't look over it, and then they send it to their client, and if their client's upset, that comes back on you. You see what I'm saying? So do not, especially if you're like the third party, make sure that you are QAing your own content and not yourself. Okay, because you spend all these hours in an e-learning development project, you spend all these hours like creating animations, spend all these hours writing scripts, like your eyes are fried. They now have blinders on them. There's no way you're going to see those typos. Like the typo I included in this image for to announce this Facebook Live, right? It's because it's just me doing it on my phone while like putting my baby to bed, and I just don't even notice, right? That's a small thing, okay? We're talking about a full script or a full course build or whatever. So get somebody else to QA, and that will really increase the value and the perception that your clients have of you, especially if you save them the embarrassment of them sending something to their client and it having all these issues. All right. So timelines, right? So timelines, of course, has everything to do with breaking down the tasks, right? So I have in here the data of the percentage that each of these things take. And so if you know how much time it takes you, then you can figure out based on these percentages, how much time you need to give in your own timeline. And of course, one of the best ways to figure out a timeline is to do like a Trello board or some of those Asana or some of those other kinds of things to map it all out. And give yourself 20% more, 20% more time, because everything takes more time. I mean, even the course that I'm working on, 4 idle courses called Vital Courses, I thought, okay, it'll take 2 months to build the entire thing. And I thought I had mapped everything out correctly, and I know how long things take, and I've done my homework, but you know what you don't account for? You don't account for like somebody getting the flu. You don't account for somebody being out sick. You don't account for subject matter experts not getting back to you on time. You don't account for, I don't know, the Wi-Fi going out one day in the office or whatever. So that's why I say like put another 20% on there, and that gives you, and if you finish early, great. If you don't, then you needed that time, and then it worked out for you because you added that extra time. All right. Do you guys have any questions? Did I miss anything when I was going over project costs and whatever? All right. Feel free to ask me questions if you guys are watching the replay. I know that this is a lot of information. I think if you just go ahead and download my project cost calculator, I'll put all the links up for like the project tracker, for the script timer, and you guys, you want my rate card? Let me know if you want my rate card, and I'll give you like a blank one or something like that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Just once again, as a recap, because I can't help myself, determine your costs, right? And that is based on experience, your skills, what kind of skills you have. Are you a Swiss Army knife of instructional design? Your speed and your output. And then time yourself, and then add, and then adjust my calculator so that it is tailored for your price and your time, or your prices for your team's time. One more thing for freelancers. One more tip. I'm sorry. Just one more. All right. The other thing I want to tell you as a freelancer is you should, if you think that people are not going to pay your rate because it's too high for them, first of all, like, I mean, maybe you need to find a new client. But if it's a project that you want to work on and you don't think that your rate is what they want to pay or whatever, you kind of got that feeling, I always ask clients in a meeting, they say, oh, can you give me a quote for a 30-minute meeting, 30-minute e-learning output or whatever? I'd be like, well, we're going to have to get on the phone and talk about it, because I need to know like exactly what level you need and all those other kinds of things, as I'm sure that you guys would do. But what I'm not afraid to ask when I'm on that phone call is, what is your budget? And they're like, well, and sometimes people hem and haw, but a lot of times people will tell you their budget. And that is just another way that you can create value. And so the way that you create value is if they give you their budget, you can say, great, I know exactly what my company or I can do for you within that budget, because you've already tracked your time on various tasks, and you know how much time and what costs you have for each of those things. And so you can say, look, I can't do a full level 3 or whatever, like crazy ideas that they have for your e-learning project at that cost. But what you can get based on your rate card, not that you have to share them with them, your rate card at that point, but you have the rate card, in your mind, based on your rate card, you'd be like, well, you can get up to 3 or 5 or whatever animated videos, and you can get, this voiceover, and you can get it all packaged for that price that you want. And so you are offering solutions that meet within your budget, but also still make sure that you are not overworking and not getting paid. All right. So I said I was recapping, but then I gave you more advice. So whatever. If you don't like it, you can just stop watching. Okay. And then the other thing that we talked about are the different types of ways that you can charge. And that is a retainer. That's like the golden goose, right? Like, get a monthly retainer for whatever outputs that you promise at a minimum to deliver for them. You can do an hourly rate, which hourly rates, sometimes they're nice, but mostly they are just going to put you back into an employee box. And then the other thing is you can have a rate card, and you can also do a percentage of the sales if you're building a course that people are going to go and sell. Or sometimes if you're solving a problem that's going to save a company money, you can get a percentage of the money that you're going to save them by implementing your course. And a lot of consultants know about that model right there. So go get my project cost calculator, tailor it for yourself. I hope this is helpful for both the corporate instructional design leaders and also are freelancers out there. So thank you so much for joining me. And let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I'll check them out later. All right. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Bye.